even before the debacle of the Cow's Garden and the catastrophe that we're dealing with now, um, there were attacks against our even friends of mine were pepper sprayed. Someone was even almost knifed, but he fought back. Clergymen regularly, when they go to the Holy Sepulchre, to any religious event, they're spat on, they're harassed, and it's becoming unlivable in Jerusalem, honestly. And the same evangelicals that preach on social media, like, oh, look at Israel, its religion of freedom is respected. It's not at all like that.
Tucker Carlson's latest interview with Palestinian evangelical pastor Munder Ishaq caused quite an uproar within the Zionist and Christian Zionist right of the United States. It did so because it threatened the last bastion of blind support for the Zionist project. Evangelical Christians. If more Christians in the US empathize with their fellow Christians in the Holy Lands, they're bound to reconsider their support for Israel. To get a deeper understanding of the issue, I take a look at one of the oldest Christian communities in Jerusalem, the Armenian Quarter. 2,000 Christians strong, the Armenian community has lived peacefully in East Jerusalem for over 15 centuries. Today, in the fog of the Al-Aqsa flood war, the community is under threat. The Cow's Garden, an area of about 11,500 square meters, representing 25% of the quarter, is at the center of a land dispute with an Israeli developer named Danny Rothman Rubenstein. Although the dispute has led to 2 lawsuits that are currently making their way through the Israeli legal system, Rothman and his company Zana Gardens have tried to deal with the situation a la Israel, by using weapons, dogs, and a whole lot of settlers. To get a better understanding of the situation and to hear more about the lives of Christians in Israel, we interviewed Karam Balan, an Armenian writer and member of the Save the Armenian Quarter movement. Please start this conversation by telling us a little bit about the recent escalation in the Armenian Quarter that happened on April 3rd and most recently on April 9th.
Yeah, so basically on the 3rd of April, the commanding officer of the Israeli police in charge of the situation at the Cow's Garden took the law into his own hands and dismantled the plastic sheds put there by the Armenian Patriarchate for our security guards. He came without a court order and with a group of employees, he said, but they didn't seem like employees. They had no permits to remove the shed, and they just took the law into their own hands and completely dismantled the sheds. A few days later, he was passing by the car, seemingly off duty. I can't confirm that though. And he saw that we had put a traffic cone at the entrance of the parking lot. He started to tell us that if you don't remove it, I'll arrest you one by one. And he got out of the car, as you saw in the video, I'm sure. He tossed the cone and he claimed that there shouldn't be any changes to the status quo of the Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem. But he himself took the law into his own hands and changed that by removing the plastic sheds.
This particular instant, did he come with any settlers, any violent settlers like he did in the past?
Yeah, when they came on scene, they were seemingly civilians and the police working side by side and removing what belongs to the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem, basically.
Can you describe what that looks like when it happened in the past?
So basically, since the 5th of November 2023, the day of the first attack, the representative of Zana Gardens, one of the representatives, Daniel Rothman Rubinstein, as well as George Warwar, an Israeli Australian and an Arab Christian, respectively. They came on the Cow's Garden premises with settlers armed with guns and attack dogs and tried to intimidate the community. And since then, for over 150 days now, our community and the members of the Save the Ark movement have been on the ground 24/7, monitoring the situation. and sacrificing a great deal of their time with their families, with their friends, sometimes even their jobs, and making sure that no further encroachments happen. But since that day, a few dozen attacks happened. They came, the most violent being on the 28th of December, 2023. They came with 30 armed thugs and electric saws, pepper sprays, batons, and started attacking the Armenian community present on the ground, which included clergymen, bishops, and children and elderly on the scene. So that was one of the most violent attacks.
But what could you do, an Armenian community that is less than 2,000 people, in the faced with such violent settlers like Sadia Herskop, the notorious man that if you Google his name, immediately you see online
Yeah,
his picture wearing a "Make Hebron Great Again," essentially make
yeah,
Hebron, ethnically cleanse Hebron. This guy is
yeah.
insane, and he's the types of settlers that are being sicked on you in this community. And of course, everyone can see online you've been nothing but respectful. You're following the law to the dot. But how do you deal with such violence and such intimidation tactics?
I mean, like I said, we've faced a few attacks since the 5th of November, and we managed to push them back. I mean, the clergymen came down, even the patriarch at some point came down to oppose the settlers alongside the Israeli police and some magavniks as well, magavniks as we call over here, the border, Israeli border police. And we pushed them back. We have a great legal team locally and internationally, some of whom have provided their time and efforts pro bono in support of our struggle, which we are extremely grateful for. Without their support, we wouldn't be in this let's say seemingly
Hmm. Okay,
optimistic situation. So
that makes sense.
we have to thank them. So we always consult with them whenever we want to make any moves. We always convene with them, and we managed with a coordinated effort with the members of the Save the Ark, with the Armenian Patriarchate, and with our own lawyers to push back the aggressors, basically. And if they try
Okay.
again, we will do the same because they came with bulldozers. They tried to intimidate us. The entire community, not a single person who was on the ground over there was intimidated. You could see in their eyes they were determined to stand their ground. We were determined to stand our ground, and we will continue to do so as long as we have the energy. And trust me, we have the energy.
Here's another question. The Israelis are famous for perfecting the process of forcing facts on the ground, as we know. And they are perfecting this process where they gradually commit blatant theft. We've seen their actions starting in 48, all the way down to Sheikh Jarrah today. How are the laws supposed to protect you in a system that condones this theft and accepts it?
I mean, like it or not, for better or worse, we are under Israeli law in Jerusalem. So we have to abide by the laws and take matters into the Israeli courts. We have two cases, one filed by the Armenian
Mhm.
Patriarchate of Jerusalem and another class action lawsuit filed by the Armenian community of Jerusalem, pending in the District Court of Jerusalem. So that's the only way we can fight back legally, and by using media to be ahead of the narrative and to properly convey the truth of the situation.
So, how do you feel about the Christian Americans that are the real purveyors of Israeli crimes in Palestine, Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and of course the Armenian Quarter? So these people are the main supporters of these violent settler movements, this violent encroachment on anything that would potentially resemble the potential Palestinian capital of East Jerusalem. How do you feel that the impetus behind these transgressions are eventually Christians?
I mean, I think in the case of the evangelical Christians, or if I may, Christian Zionists, um, I think they're by and large ignorant about the nuances pertaining to the Holy Land. To them, Palestinian automatically equals Muslim, and that's that. Anyone who isn't Israeli is by default Palestinian Muslim. But you have Greek Christians, Syrian Christians, Armenian Christians like myself, and I think they're simply not aware of the situation. And even if they were, given the power of the Israeli lobby in the U.S., I think even if they were aware of the situation, they would still side with Israel, irrespective of how they treat their Christian minorities in Jerusalem. And there is a slight shift. I mean, on the conservative right, the likes of Candace Owens, Michael Knowles, who occasionally mention the plight of the Armenians, especially during the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, which saw the expulsion of over 150,000 Armenians from their, again, indigenous homeland for over a millennia. So I think there's a slight shift on the conservative right, but a lot more needs to be done to get our message across all political divides, whether it's on the left or on the right.
So, Karam, with that in mind, the question of Artsakh, let me ask you this question. Why isn't the Armenian community more comfortable with their Palestinian identity and always tend to separate themselves from the broader Palestinian struggle by giving themselves titles like Jerusalemites, not Palestinians? When you all know full well that Israel plays, undercover footsie with the Turkish government under the table, refuses to recognize the Armenian genocide, has supported
not even under the table,
and even
denies
the Armenian genocide often. The Israeli government denies the Armenian genocide to play diplomatic games with the Turkish government. And of course, we all saw how Israel was the #1 supporter of the Azeri army and armed them during the incursion into Nagorno-Karabakh.
Over 75% of weapons export was to Azerbaijan from Israel. We're aware of that.
So with that in mind, why is the Armenian community not more comfortable with their Palestinian identity?
The thing is, Armenians have their own identity. Armenians in Jerusalem have been there since the 4th century, when Armenia adopted Christianity as an official state religion in 301, being the first nation to do so. A lot of pilgrims flocked to Jerusalem. They developed the Armenian Quarter. They formed the Armenian Patriarchate. A few centuries later, the Armenian Genocide happened. So you had the post-genocide Armenians who arrived in 1915. So Jerusalem, a city that has been ruled by different dynasties, kingdoms, and empires, throughout all that time, throughout all the 1700 uninterrupted and continuous presence of Armenians in the Holy Land, we have managed to maintain our Armenian identity, and as such, the vast majority identify as Jerusalemite Armenians. Are there Palestinian Armenians? Of course, but a very small minority. Are there Israeli Armenians? Again, a very small minority. The vast majority identify first and foremost as Jerusalemite Armenians. Now, that doesn't mean we don't empathize with either side. Of course we do. But we are proud of our identity, and it's a distinct identity. And I think even given the climate of the situation over here, it also plays to our advantage. So it helps us in that way as well.
Well, let me ask you just one follow-up on this.
Sure.
Does it help clarify your position, not identity-based position, just a political position, considering what you're seeing as a unified Armenian community, what you're seeing the Israeli government and the Israeli settlers treating you versus how the classic Yasser Arafat stating that he's Yasser Arafatian? Does the duality of these two ways of treatment now, especially with what's happening, affect this identity that the Armenian community senses?
I mean, as Armenians, we are treated as second-class citizens, as His Beatitude Archbishop Nur Rahman again stated in an interview several years back, we are even third-class citizens. So, as such, we identify with the injustices that the Palestinians face on a daily basis, the discrimination, the the outright barbarity going on in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, we have our own identity, and we empathize with Palestinians on the fact that they have been dispossessed and displaced like us. We empathize with the Jewish people as well for having suffered a genocide like us. But we our identity is what we are trying to preserve the most within Jerusalem, because the Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem is a walled-off community, so to speak. So we have our own customs, our own traditions, our own language, and even our own Armenian school
Mm-hmm.
in Jerusalem. So as such, over the millennia, it has translated into a unique identity, which we are proud of. So that doesn't mean that we are blind to the injustices happening in the region. We call them out as we see them, and especially in the case of Israel, when they were complicit in the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh by providing, as you said, the weaponry to Azerbaijan, and by continuously using the Armenian genocide as a PR stunt, to a surface level PR stunt, to use it against Erdogan and Turkey, when in reality, the Turkish-Israeli Azeri axis is one of the strongest alliances in the region, and they tested their drones on our brothers and sisters in Armenia. They colluded with Azerbaijan
Mm-hmm.
and Turkey in the destruction of Artsakh, basically. So on that end, we are very disappointed by their stance in as far as Armenians are concerned, and the issue of the Armenian genocide. They should empathize more with us and recognize that we have a common history of suffering, but that is not the case, unfortunately.
So you mentioned the Armenian Genocide. Is it true that you have in the Armenian Quarter maps that showcase the impact of the Armenian Genocide and the movement of the Armenian people, and that these maps were defaced and some settlers wrote on them that you deserve this? Is it also true that it's a commonplace infraction of Israelis or Israeli settlers spitting on priests, pepper spraying youth, beating up youth, and urinating on doors of churches in the Armenian Quarter? Is this a common occurrence?
Yeah. In recent years, it's increased a lot more, but even before the debacle of the Cow's Garden and the catastrophe that we're dealing with now, um, there were attacks against our even friends of mine were pepper sprayed. Someone was even almost knifed, but he fought back. Clergymen regularly, when they go to the Holy Sepulchre, to any religious event, they're spat on, they're harassed, and it's becoming unlivable in Jerusalem, honestly. And the same evangelicals that preach on social media, like, oh, look at Israel, its religion of freedom is
Hmm.
respected. It's not at all. I mean, even with approaching Easter festivities coming, they issue a select number of permits for each Christian denomination to visit the
Hmm.
Holy Sepulchre. Whereas when it's an Israeli religious holiday, national holiday, everyone flocks to the Temple Mount, and without restrictions and without reservations. So if religious freedom is the cornerstone of Israeli democracy, it should be applied across all of its residents and population.
So, Keram, as you're talking about these infractions against the Armenian community, we find in Israeli news that Ben Gvir, the head of this new police unit, has said that spitting on Christians is a Jewish tradition. How do you, as a Christian living in Jerusalem, a Christian Armenian, feel that this guy is one of the top five in the Israeli government, and he's so blatantly saying that such an insulting infraction is part of a culture?
I mean, that's why it's important to distinguish and separate hardline Zionism of Itamar Ben Gvir's ilk with proper Judaism. Judaism isn't necessarily Zionism, and it's become conflated during this conflict to the detriment of a possibility of sitting down on a table and discussing terms and negotiations to resolve the catastrophe going on in Gaza. So to that end, I would like to say that Itamar Ben Gvir doesn't represent the majority of Jewish people. If his own interpretation gives him the audacity to say that it's a Jewish tradition to spit on Christians and Armenians, I'll refer to him to our Israeli friends who have been by our side, Israeli civil societies who have supported us, Knesset members who have stood with us, as well as uh, our local lawyer, Daniel Seidman, who has since day one of our local lawyers, sorry, who has since day one supported our struggle.
What's next? They're seeking maniacal violent settlers on you and are gonna do what they do best: theft. What's the path moving forward here? When do we hear back from one of the two lawsuits, and when will their impact affect things on the status quo on the ground?
So the lawsuits in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll have an answer on both lawsuits pertaining to the Cows Garden issue. So once we find out what Zanak Garden, the defense, so to speak, that they've mounted against us, we'll again convene with our lawyers, our international lawyers, and our local lawyers, and assess what steps to take. And as for the situation on the ground, we will continue taking shifts, staying 24/7 on the ground, monitoring the situation, being in constant contact with the community in case there's an attack, because we managed to gather, garner the support of the entire Armenian community almost. As exemplified by the class action lawsuit we filed, we had over 400 signatories, which for a community of our size is massive. So on the ground, we will stay there. We will, like I said, we have the energy, and we will continue to the very end, because given what we saw in Artsakh, given the silence of the international community during the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, we were more motivated, and our resolve became stronger to resist any type of encroachment and any type of land loss as far as the Armenians in the world are concerned, because to us it's not only a Jerusalemite issue, the land issue in Jerusalem, it concerns all Armenians, and as such they should be as involved in the matter as we are. And we've gotten a lot of support from the Armenian diaspora, from Armenian media outlets, and the international law firm that we're working with, Kirkonian Dajani law firm. Again, they're taking the case pro bono and helping us every step of the way. But our main disappointment, quite frankly, is from the Republic of Armenia, from the government of Armenia, our own country. Very, very disappointing. We expect them to support us and to, at the very least, release a statement. Even though I don't believe in these political platitudes anymore, we condemn this, we condemn that, we are monitoring this and that. It's all just noise at this point. So we expect a firm statement and a backing from our country, and hopefully it will happen soon. But as I said, we're very disappointed.
Whenever I see the videos coming out of the Armenian Quarter, one thing is common throughout all of these clips that are shared online is the Artsakh flag. You often see it that appears out of nowhere. So yeah, the sentiment there is one of we lost one battle, we're not going to lose another. And
Exactly.
Well,
Um,
Samantha Powers was just in Yerevan, so I wouldn't hold my breath that they're gonna
Samantha
say anything
Powers is,
anytime soon.
I mean, wherever Samantha Powers goes, death follows. So
Yeah.
when I saw her in Armenia, I mean, I didn't have a good
Allah
feeling. As
yastur, Allah yastur, as we say in Arabic. When you
yeah,
see
she's
Samantha
the
Powers, you just say Allah yastur.
yeah. So she's the foremost genocide grifter in the world.
She is. Okay, Karam. Thank you very much for your time. We'll have to leave it
My
here.
pleasure. Thank you for
Karam
having me.
Balan, of course, Karam Balan, Jerusalemite Armenian from the Armenian Quarter. Thank you again.
Thank you.